This is going to be the only practice guide you'll ever need no matter what level you're at. First of all, thanks so much to everybody who commented asking for this video on the video I made a couple weeks ago where I started talking about like what we can learn from professional sports players, and I said if you want a video on like a professional practice plan, then leave a comment for that. And you did, and here is the video, so thank you so much. It really means a lot to me when I see people liking the videos, interacting in the comments, subscribing to the channel. It really makes my day when you guys do that, so thank you for that. Also, super exciting for this video, I put together a handout for you that you can get to go along with this at quickstartclarinet.com/practice. So go over there, you'll put your name and email address so I can email you a handout of this. This download will be really useful. It's gonna actually be the full practice guide that we'll go over that you can use every single day. And there's also a lot of information written up there too, so that you can sort of refresh the things that you learn in this video and actually put this stuff into action, because after all, knowledge is useless unless you actually put it into action. You won't get better, you won't practice better unless you actually use the practice techniques that I'm going to suggest here. I want to be really in-depth with this and not just talk about the things to do in the practice room, but some things we can actually do outside of the practice room to make our practicing more effective as well. So the very first thing that I want to talk about is setting goals. Goals are really, really important for advancing your playing, but also for sort of inspiring and motivating you and remembering that bigger why of why you're doing this and that inspiration and motivation to get into the practice room. So when you're setting your goals, think about something really concrete, really specific, and ask yourself why. It should be a bigger motivation for why you want to practice, why you want to get better at playing. A good goal could be something like winning a professional audition, getting into a specific school, having a great recital performance, preparing for a big concert, getting into a specific community band, performing a challenging piece. The goals can be really whatever you want, and that's what's so cool is that you're on your own journey and you can decide what you personally want. It could maybe even be tackling some like specific fundamental problem that you're working on. It's really limitless for what your goals can be and could be. The most important thing though is to make sure that it's something specific and something that you know that you've achieved it. I infamously started playing and my goal was to be the best clarinet player ever, which is a little bit too nebulous because there's no really way to know that I've achieved that. So maybe I could say like winning a specific award, winning an audition with the New York Philharmonic, things like that are more specific and more attainable, maybe attainable, but those things are more specific and your goals should be specific like that as well. So you really know when you've accomplished it, and then you can set a new goal and move on to the next goal. It's also important as you're setting whatever your goal may be for now that you think of it as a long-term goal. For me, even just saying like winning an audition with the New York Philharmonic gave me a little bit of like tension and stress and thinking like, oh man, I don't know if I could ever do that. Like that would take so much work and yeah, I don't know if that's possible. And that can actually be a way that goals are a little bit debilitating, where if I feel like I need to go into the practice room and become good enough to win an audition with the New York Philharmonic, there's no way I'm ever gonna go practice because I know that's just like ridiculous and silly and impossible. So in order to make our goals not debilitating and thinking of this sort of impossible thing that we can never really accomplish, we need to break down our goals into more digestible tasks. And this is still in sort of the brainstorming thing. We're not to our daily to-dos yet as we're practicing, but we want to sort of think about all of the possible tasks that we can break up our goal into and all the things that we can do to work towards that goal and make progress towards that final goal. Even with the goals, you might do a little bit of brainstorming and think like, oh, I really want to play this piece, but I've also always wanted to perform a solo recital, or whatever your goals may be. You're sort of thinking about multiple options and finding like what resonates best with you and what will really be motivating and inspirational to you to get into the practice room. But these tasks are even more of a brainstorm. I really like the term brain dump as well, where you sort of just put everything out there. So in the tasks section of the practice guide, which you can download at quickstartclarinet.com/practice, that task section is really to just like put in anything that you can think of. Don't edit yourself. Don't think like, I could maybe do that, but I'm not really sure if it would help me reach my goal. Don't think, oh, I could do this, but I don't know if I really want to or if I really have time to do this. Just anything that you think like, this would make me a better musician, this would make me get closer to my goal, put it down in the tasks box. We will edit it later in our daily to-dos, but just put down as much as you can right now. Get really creative. Some things that would be helpful to include in the tasks that you may not be thinking of are things like record myself, listen to the recordings of myself, listen to recordings of other people, analyze the music, do some theory work, analyze the form of a piece, sort of just imagine how the music goes in your head. Some of those might be a little bit less obvious to you, something that you've never thought about doing in your practice, but can actually be really beneficial for learning a piece really well. Another thing to put in your tasks is just some stuff that you have to do, like maybe if you're playing in an ensemble and you need to learn music for that ensemble, but you can sort of put a twist on it and really make it related to your goals. So say my goal is to be more confident with technique in my music and confident with my like finger technique and playing fast, and then I'm working on something like Lincolnshire Posy for a concert. I can really like dig into those technical passages in the fourth movement and say I want to go after those so I can play it well on my concert, but also so I can move towards my goal of having confident technique. So you can see how you can really go crazy here. And I actually want to challenge you to be as creative as possible and leave a comment with the most interesting task that you came up with and how it relates to your goal. Maybe even something like, I don't know, cleaning up your practice space so that you can be more effective about going in there or something like that. All kinds of things are great here. Don't edit yourself at all yet. Really do the brain dump and leave a comment with your most interesting one. So now that you've done some brainstorming and you know what your long-term goal that you're focusing on for now is, and you've brain dumped as many tasks as you can come up with to get yourself there, now we can move on to sort of the daily practice routines. One thing that I didn't mention in the tasks, but you definitely want to include in your tasks is some fundamental work, and that, of course, is the next section, because fundamentals, if you know me, you know they're my favorite, and they're very important to playing. So that's why this next section is the fundamentals, and this is where we go from the sort of brainstorming, coming up with ideas section into the more practical, like what we're actually going to do in the practice room every day. So what are the fundamentals and what do we do for the fundamentals? This is sort of the 3-step warm-up and where our warm-up comes in. Remember that the warm-up isn't just warming up your muscles to get ready to play. It's all about actually figuring out how to play the instrument. So of course we have our long tones, which are our sort of most important warm-up where we get our tone figured out. We have technique where we work on wiggling our fingers and maintaining that great tone. And then we have articulation, where we work on getting the motion of the tongue just right and maintaining, again, that good long tone sound. The reason why fundamentals are so important is because if you can't do these things on the instrument, if you can't have great tone while moving your fingers and moving your tongue, then you're not going to be able to play what you have to play in your music. With these warm-ups and these fundamentals, this is sort of going to be your first start to the day, your first building of your practicing, and this will sort of get you in the zone every single time you get into the practice room and will help you to get warmed up and get these fundamental things going for whatever music you have to play so that eventually you can reach whatever that goal may be. The next part of our daily tasks is to take those big brainstormed tasks that we have with everything we could possibly do to improve and work towards our goal, and we're going to put that into daily tasks. And for these, we're going to get a little bit more specific, where we're going to say like exactly what we need to do, how long we need to do it for, and then what we're going to be focusing on with it. This focusing part especially is really going to be important. So say that you took, for my example, I want to do Lincolnshire Posy is something that I need to work on and play, and my goal is to have really great finger technique. Then I would put like Lincolnshire Posy, the fourth movement, for whatever time. We'll talk about timings in a little bit, and then go into my focus of I want to get those sextuplet passages really, really clean, really clear, work on it with a metronome, do it slow so that I can be really confident about how my fingers are moving, all of that stuff that I'm going to be working on to turn the pieces that I'm playing, the etudes, the technical exercises, whatever it is that you're focusing or playing, and what you're going to focus on as you're playing that in order to move towards your goal and in order to make this better. And then the final and also important part of the practice guide is some reflection. So reflection is really important because it helps us sort of keep track of our progress, which can be motivational when we see how much progress we've actually made, and it can also be helpful to keep us on track. Sometimes you might reflect and think, I didn't really actually make anything better today. I spent my time in the practice room, but I'm not sure if I actually made too much progress on anything. So I'm probably going to want to revisit several of these things in future practice sessions. You could also maybe say something like, these 16 measures, I have them down, they're great, they're gonna stay great because I practiced it so much, so then in the future you don't have to worry about doing those. So this reflection is really the time to sort of think about the progress that you made in that particular practice session and start the seeds of what you're gonna be doing in future practice sessions. So now that we have all of the parts laid out and we know what we need to be doing, let's talk about how long to do each of these things and sort of what this actually looks like in your regular practice routine. So for the goal, this is going to be, again, a really long-term goal. So this is going to be something that you really just do once, but I want you to write it down every single day as you're working on it. So say that you're working on a recital. Every single day I want you to write have a great recital. And then you know what you're working on, and that sort of refreshes and remotivates and re-inspires you to think yeah, I really want to have a great recital or whatever your big goal is. And you sort of do this until that goal is completed. So obviously once your recital's over, you can brainstorm and come up with a new goal and then write that down every single day until you achieve it. With the tasks, this is something that I would say maybe do weekly. You could also do it daily as well. This is sort of depending on you and what works best for you. If you can come up with enough tasks to fill a whole week in one brainstorming session, then that's great. If you're a little more focused in and can only think about the things that you have to get done today in this practice session, then that's okay as well. Then for the fundamentals, I like this to be about a third of the practice time, and then the rest of the practicing to be about 2/3. So this is going to depend a lot on how long you're actually planning on practicing. Within that third of the fundamental time, you can sort of experiment with how much of that's dedicated to long tones, then technique, and then articulation. I like to spend a good amount of time on technique, especially just because there's a lot of different ways to move your fingers. Long tones is pretty much, as long as you can play each note with a really great sound, you really only have to play through each note once, or one exercise for whatever that exercise is for the day. Same thing with articulation. It's just about moving your tongue. There's a lot of different ways to move your tongue in terms of how long it's on the reed and what kind of shape to the notes that you want. So there's some experimenting to be done there. But with technique, there's all 24 of the different scales and all the different variations of the minor scales. So there's a lot more to get through in terms of how your fingers have to move and where your fingers have to move. But again, it's sort of up to you for how you want to split that up, but just make sure that you're spending a good amount of time on it. You're really developing that sound and spending the time to get the sound you want on the long tones, and then feeling comfortable with warming up your fingers, getting some flexibility in there and getting really great motion, and same thing with the motion of the tongue for the articulation. Now, when we get into the actual practicing of the things that we're going to be doing after we've done our fundamentals and sort of our warm-up, then we spend the bulk of our time. And what we do for these tasks, this is where we start doing the editing and refining of our brain dump of tasks that we did up here. And this is where we come up with the few things that are going to have the biggest impact or are the top priority. So say you have a concert in a week, and it's coming up very quickly, and you have to learn the music for that and be confident on your performance for that concert that's coming soon, then that might be the first task that you do. I'm just going to write a couple tasks here. I think it's important to realize that we don't have to accomplish everything in one practice session. That's the point of these digestible tasks. We're just going to do a few of them to get really comfortable and really get the best work done on them that we can. For the time, you can sort of come up with what you think is going to be the best. Again, this is all very customizable and very up to you as an individual. This is sort of the framework, and then it's up to you to fill it in and really go for what you think is going to be the best for you. So whatever time you think you're going to need for it. Say your task is just one phrase in a piece that's been a little bit difficult. I bet in 10 minutes you can get that done and feel comfortable and confident with that. If the task is something a little bit bigger, then you might want to take a little bit more time. So it's up to you. And there's going to be a little extra bonus at the end of this with some more information about timings that will be helpful for figuring out these times. And then the focus, of course, be as detailed as possible, so that when you're in the practice room, you know exactly what you're going to be doing. And then finally, we have the reflection that you do at the end. With the practice guide, I don't think that you should include like filling out the practice time or practice guide as part of your practice time, because we want to really have like our full amount of time in this fundamentals and practice stuff. So I think it's a good idea to just take an extra 5 or 10 minutes to fill this out at the start, where you really look at the tasks that you came up with at the beginning of the week, pull them down into here for the day, figure out the timings that you're gonna do, and then you go after this. So if you're practicing for an hour, you spend a good 20 minutes here and a good 40 minutes here. And then after that, you can spend another 5 to 10 minutes sort of reflecting and getting your game plan for tomorrow and the next practice session. So now that you know how to organize your practice and sort of what you need to be doing while you're practicing and why you're doing it to reach those long-term goals, let's talk about the timing of these things. Everybody wants to know how long they should practice, how much time they need to practice in order to reach their goals. And honestly, that's a pretty difficult question to answer because it varies so much from person to person, and it varies a lot on what level you want to be at. I actually have another video that goes super in depth with the time it takes to really practice at a professional level and what you need to dedicate in order to become a professional and how much you should be practicing there. So check that out if you're interested in those more in-depth times in that sort of professional practice routine. But I want to go over some other tips and tricks and sort of helping you to figure out how's the best way to practice and get the most out of it for whatever level you're at. So there's 2 important things to go over with our time. The first one is actually how much in a week we practice, and then how we split up our time within our practice session, which we've already talked about a little bit. So when it comes to these timings, I want to sort of give you the best practice and then also sort of the minimum practice. I know a lot of people are busy, a lot of people don't necessarily want to be professionals. If your goal is to just have fun playing, then you don't need to practice super a lot or work every single day for 4 to 6 hours. That's the professional practice routine. So I want to give you sort of a minimum as well. If you're just getting started, have a little bit of an interest in or sort of just dabbling in this, which is totally okay. But for our weekly practice, how many times we practice a week, the best thing to do, of course, is every single day. I always take some breaks. I usually take at least one day a week off. So it's good and helpful to take some breaks, but every day is the best. If you really want to be at the very highest level, highest professional level, every day, and then maybe take 1 or 2 days off a month. So generally every day, but some time off is good as well. The minimum is going to be 3 times a week. And if you really want to be extra minimum, you can do your band practice or whatever ensemble playing you might be doing could be included in that 3 times. As long as you're actually playing the instrument and thinking about making really good sounds and working on improving at least 3 times a week, then you're gonna be in good shape. I highly recommend 3 times of personal practice as a minimum outside of your lessons or your ensemble playing. But if you really wanna be the bare minimum, getting the instrument out 3 times a week will be enough to improve very slowly. Now, how much time should you be spending when you're having the instrument out and working on it, however many times a week you decide to do it? The best practice for this is going to be at least 2 hours. You can sort of go longer with this. You can go as long as you want, and that's better to a certain point. Usually after 4 to 6 hours, you'll start to get really fatigued and will have diminishing returns, so it's not really worth it. And it's good to do other things with your life besides just play clarinet all day, every day, though that does sound like it could be fun. The absolute minimum is going to be 20 minutes. And I think you'll find what's best for you is somewhere in between these. 20 minutes is almost not worth even getting the instrument out, but an hour can be really nice, where it's not the full 2 hours or longer, but it's a good amount of time. So somewhere in between here will probably be the most comfortable for you. But if you do like 20 minutes and do it like every day, that can be pretty effective and help you get that steady, consistent growth. Now I have one sort of bonus time technique for you that I think could be really helpful, and this is using the Pomodoro technique. This is a pretty popular sort of productivity and efficiency plan or timing technique. It was developed quite a while ago. You can just Google the Pomodoro technique and find lots of information about it. But the idea of it is that you do something for very concentrated for a small amount of time. It comes from this idea of a kitchen timer, where you set your kitchen timer for 15, 25, however long is best for you, and you just focus on your one task until that timer goes off, and then you can take a short break. So applying the Pomodoro technique to our sort of minimum and best amount of practice time for each day would look something like this, with one Pomodoro being one work and then small break cycle. This works out really well because if this is your 20-minute session, then you can do 5 minutes of your fundamentals and then take a break. Then you can do 5 minutes of one task, take a break, and then 5 minutes of another task, take a break. And you're at actually 21 minutes, but it's close enough. For the 2-hour blocks, it's the same idea, where the Pomodoro now will be 30 minutes of work and then a 10-minute break. And that'll again give you one block of fundamentals, one block of a task, and then another block of a different task. As you get into like the longer 30 minutes, you might not find that you need to spend a whole 30 minutes on one task in particular. It probably wouldn't take you that long to listen to one of your recordings and get some ideas on things to improve if it's a short recording, or whatever your task may be. So you can break it up into sort of like half Pomodoros for that. So you do one full Pomodoro on your fundamentals to get that third of your practice time in, and then maybe the other two you split up. So you do 15 minutes and then a 5-minute break on one task. And then you could do that for 4 tasks, and you're still maintaining that ratio of like 1/3 on the fundamentals, 2/3 on whatever tasks or music that you're practicing. And again, remember that you'll need an additional 5 to 10 minutes besides this to sort of plan your practice and then reflect at the end and start planning for the next day. But I promise it's really worth it. That extra 5 to 10 minutes you spend planning and reviewing and reflecting will make the 20 or 2 hours that you spend practicing infinitely more productive, because you'll really have a plan and know what you need to do next, and you won't be getting bogged down or stuck thinking about what you want to do while you're practicing. So I hope that helps give you a way to organize your practicing and gives you what to do, how long to do it for. Remember to check out my video on what a professional practice schedule looks like, because that's quite a bit more intensive, and I go into some more in-depth stuff with organizing breaks and such like that. And also don't forget to go to quickstartclarinet.com/practice to get the download of this practice guide. I have the first page is a write-up that goes pretty in-depth with all the information on how to do this stuff and what to be thinking about, and then the other page is actually a practice guide for you to fill out on your own, where you put in your goals, your tasks, and get that all nice and organized. Now, the one last thing that's really important for you to remember as you're doing this is to have fun. Have fun while you're practicing. Don't get too stressed about this. It's really nice to be organized, and it's good to have those goals, but don't stress out about reaching them, and don't invest all of your energy and your life's purpose and like your meaning and value as a human into this one musical goal. It's great to be reaching towards something and working towards something, but as long as you're putting in the effort and working towards it, that's all that you can do. That's all that you really have control of. And that's all that you need to do. Your music is not everything in your life. It may be something that's very important and very special to you, but it's okay if you don't reach every single goal that you ever set for yourself. And it's okay if you just enjoy the process of working through it and working towards it. That's the one thing that I absolutely love about the Pomodoro technique and having this organization, because it helps you to not be like, oh man, I'm never going to be in the New York Philharmonic. There's no way I could possibly practice enough to do that. And it sort of shifts your focus to being a little bit more in the moment rather than being stressed about those future goals, because you organize your practice. You say, I'm going to spend 15 minutes doing this excerpt, working on this passage, whatever it is you may be doing, and you do that 15 minutes for that day, and then you do your reflection and say, you know, I think I feel comfortable and confident with how I'm playing that. Or you say, I think I need to spend a little bit more time on that the next time I practice, and then you're in good shape. You're ready to go. You've done your practicing for the day, you've put in that time for the day, and if you just keep putting in that time each day with each practice session and have those goals and keep track of where you're going and always have in mind the direction you're aiming towards, then you'll make progress. Really, all you have to do to be great at something is spend the dedicated time for it, go for that quality. Remember, it's better to really take the time on just a small section and get it going really great, get your long tones sounding absolutely fantastic, rather than trying to like just cram through as much as you can, playing all the rep at way too fast of speeds. Really spend the time for that quality, put in your time for whatever you have planned out for your times, and you will definitely improve. One other little piece of advice is remember that you can make this flexible. If you set up a 30-minute practice routine 3 times a week and find that you want to accomplish more, then go ahead and make it longer. If you set up a 4-hour everyday practice routine and find yourself physically in pain, your mouth hurts, you're just mentally exhausted, then cut it back a little bit. It's okay. As long as you're putting in time, then you're going to be getting better, as long as you're going for quality. So have fun with it, enjoy your time practicing, and trust the process and trust that you'll continue to improve as long as you're staying organized and putting that time in. Thanks so much for watching. I hope this ultimate practice guide really helps to motivate and inspire you to put the time in the practice room and make that progress. And if this was helpful for you, I would really appreciate it if you shared this with somebody else so that we can get the word out there and help everybody have this really nice, organized and productive practicing. It obviously takes a lot of effort for me to put the handout together and put the video together and come up with all of these ideas and such. So I really appreciate it getting out to as many people as possible, because nothing makes me happier than helping people enjoy their time making music and become better musicians. So thank you for watching this. Thank you for sharing it if you liked it and found it helpful, and I will see you in another video.